Awesome. How's it going, everybody? So, for this week, Daniel, especially you to know, I'm traveling. I am going to be one more week of distraction, and then I'll be back to my normal, usual sit down in front of my computer all day and all night and work all day and all night all week routine. But I have one more distracting week this week where I have to travel over to the East Coast. So, if you're trying to contact me or reach me this week, I am going to be hard to reach for half of the week. And then the rest of the week, I'm going to be distracted because I'm teaching a workshop. So I won't be fully focused like I usually am halfway focused. um, so, and then at the end of this week, and then after this week is over, I'm back to my normal routine. So you should be able to get a hold of me at the regular frequency. But this next week is going to be one more kind of crazy one. And I'm not looking forward to it because half of the country is frozen right now. And where there is frozen, there's usually bad conditions for flying. Oh, why am I saying this right now? Jinxing it. Anyway, I shall be traveling. All right. So the thing that is now very obvious is some of you are finally getting that cross contour thing working for you. You're starting to understand what it means and you're doing it well. But the thing I have to keep reminding you all, this is not a clothing class, a drapery class. This is a figure drawing class. And the figure is the reason the drapery is behaving the way that it is. Most of you are not thinking about that. You're getting caught up in building the architecture of the drapery, which, like I said, some of you are using the cross contour lines now, and it's working very effectively. Except when you look at those contour lines, they're not going around the figure, they're going straight across the clothing. So, as an example here, you have a cylinder, and your drapery is doing something, like this, folds falling down like this. And you could build your contour lines so that those folds are on the shape, and then put those contour lines over it. Or you can actually think about the surface that those things are truly sitting on top of. And you could actually be mapping out those contour lines so they go with the form. Actually, those lines I'm going to need to go the other way. That one is okay. This one is okay, but this one needs to go like this because it's in a different part of the perspective of the cylinder. It's not over here on a wall that's turning away. Now, what I'm doing will not make sense to you if you don't do perspective. If you don't use perspective at all, then this is what you're going to do over here, which is not perspective. If you notice, these are going in a straight line, but this is going downward and out and in and out and in and out and so forth. It has a lot of undulation to it, but these lines that I've drawn across it have totally flattened it out. It's not actually enhancing the volume. where any of these lines over here are enhancing the volume, because they're all explaining what we're looking at in 3 dimensions. We can see the rise and the the dipping and the rising of the forms, because those little lines are moving across the surfaces doing the same thing. They're dipping and rising on those surfaces. And when I draw my cylinder with the facets on it, and I know that the light is coming down and ending at a very specific spot on the form, as I'm shading, the way that I'm shading the surface coincides with the facet that I'm drawing within, and also changes in value based upon where the light source is. Right? Highlight down along through here. The gradation gets lighter as it goes towards that. Then it gets darker towards the core shadow. Then the core shadow happens. Then it gets lighter as it goes back into reflected light and so forth. And the lines this way help me shade in that direction. The lines this way help me keep everything uniform in that direction. And if those lines change, then so do my decisions, because the surface is changing. And I have to think about that. So if the light is coming from this way, then this side of the object is going to be lit, and this side is going to be in shadow. Where does the shadow fall? On the object. And then based upon the light source, because it is brighter above than it is from below, on these objects that we're shading, where did they change? Right? Our light ends here. So we have tone moving across this way, but we also have tone moving this way, and it's going over this form, and then under it, and then casting from it. All those things are happening at once, and the way I just shaded that totally killed the space. Doesn't look shaded. Those lines, when they descend, also need to go with the curvature of the space. So my shading is being very thoughtful of the surface that I'm shading on. I'm not just randomly stuffing tones inside of here. I'm thinking about the direction of the form because of the grid lines. The grid lines have completely informed me. Without them, I would have shaded this whole thing in like this, and then I'd still have to figure out what to do to shade it, because that would not be doing anything for me. We shade this way, we can shade this way. We can even shade this way if we want to, just as long as they uphold the arcing quality of the cylinder that we're shading over the top of. And ultimately, we're shading towards a smoothness. So when we do our hatch lines, that's broken up. This is continuous. And what I'm shooting for is continuous. Now it's broken. And once it starts varying too much in there, then I need to go back through and find the value that works and fix the rest of it. So it starts off with its simple notan. And then once I can see the notan, then I can change its value in its gradation, because no object is flat. All objects have transition to them, because that's how light works. Light bends around form. Light is continuously changing. It is never constant. Questions? There are 3 of you here. That will warrant many questions. So you've confused everything right there in the last part of your conversation. So that shows that there's a need for organization. A halftone is nothing more than another value. That's all it is. There isn't anything particularly special about it. But halftones are relegated to the light side of the form. That's where halftones exist. So a halftone is not the highlight. It is anything that is darker than the highlight on the lit side. So the whole lit side is in a halftone. And since there is no such thing as pure white or pure black, there will never be a moment when there is a complete space completely devoid of any halftone, unless you're doing a graphic design choice where you have a vignette, something very full and physical, but with nothing surrounding it, just floating. That's a vignette. But halftones are light. That's what they are. And when you're putting the halftones in, what you're doing is you're developing the form within the light. So our lit side, let me get an object. And the answer to all of these questions is use logic, but we have to understand what we're looking at to use logic. So let's see, let me see, forms. Oh, you gotta be kidding me, come on. I'll start with this one right here because this one's kind of obscure, which is how half of the photo reference you guys are using is. All right, so our light source is coming from above. We can see exactly where it's coming from because of the highlight on the object, and that's right here. This object is sitting near something dark. That's over here because it's projecting a darkness onto the sphere over here. Out over here is like in a courtyard, like brick or a wall that's red or something. You can see that all in this space right here. It's reflective. This object is a reflective object or semi-reflective object. It is not diffused and it is not completely metallic. It's somewhere in between. So it has reflective properties to it. Where the light is coming from up here, if you know where to look, you'll see right away that right through here is the meridian line that differentiates what's being lit from above from everything else. Now, the reason I brought up the wall over here is because this is a reflective object and this is sitting near something dark. So this entire side over here might be perceived as a shadow when it is not. If the light is up here, it cannot be a shadow. It just cannot be. Unless there is some kind of eave or rooftop over here that is projecting a shadow pattern down along this object. I don't know how big this sphere is, but it doesn't look all that big. And I would assume that there is probably not a cast shadow because there isn't one on the ground. There isn't another light on the ground. So basically what that's saying is that's a reflection. You can also see another color right along through here. It's kind of greenish. So they're probably outside in a courtyard. This is the reflection of brick. There's some plants. There's a wall. There's an opening up here. And there's something over here that it's sitting near. Basically, we've uncovered the entire space that it's within. So that helps us then start to build the form. And when we're starting to draw this, we know then we have to put the shadows underneath here. This is where the shadow is going to go logically, because the highlight is right here. It can't go anywhere else on a sphere. It cannot go anywhere else. Then we have reflections. There's going to be some over here. There's going to be some along in here. There's going to be some over here. But then we have the rest of the form. So we have to think about those reflections as halftones. So starting at the edge where the light and the dark are meeting each other, somewhere along in here, everything below that edge has to be darker in order for us to be able to visually differentiate what is on the lit side versus what is in the shaded side. So as we go upward towards that highlight, the halftones get lighter. Then as it starts to move away from that highlight, they get darker. Then they hit their core, and this is sort of the quote-unquote darkest edge, and then everything below that is going to be reflected light bouncing up from all the different directions. So the reflected light from over here, a little bit darker. The reflected light from over here, it gets a little bit lighter through this section, but it definitely gets darker down here where we have what's called an occlusion. An occlusion is a space where no light can really enter into because it is so shallow. Light has very little power to bounce around within that shallow space. It's where things come together. It's usually a lot darker because of that. And as we start to darken the rest of the sphere, because over here is a little bit darker, right, because of the rounded form, and as it comes around towards us, it gets lighter this way. And then as it goes back around this way, it starts to get darker again. And we also have that darker reflection in there. And it's a little bit darker over here, a little bit lighter right here. And then it gets darker as it goes up over the top, which is also a halftone. And as we start to develop all of these halftones, they form the highlight. And as these halftones get closer to the core shadow, they darken, but they don't change their name. They don't become 3/4 tones or anything like that. They remain the title of halftone. And then we get to the core shadow, and the core shadow is that's its label, and that's the absence of direct light or indirect light. And as we move down into the shadow pattern, we remain dark like a shadow should, but we start to lighten it a little bit, but no lighter than anything up here. It can't be as bright as anything up there, or it will not be perceived as a shadow space. So if you notice, over here looks really bright. You could almost argue that it looks just as bright as anything up here. Now squint your eyes and look at it. Notice how dark it actually is. When you squint your eyes, you get the edge of the shadow forming in your visual field. You don't see that though when you don't squint. And you also notice the transition of values as they go up. Now the reason why this core shadow over here is not very strong is because this object is being photographed on a cloudy day, if you want to call it that, right? The day is diffused. So there isn't a powerful light source involved. The light source is what you would call diffused. So everything is lighter than it usually would be if the source of light was stronger. The shadow would be more apparent. Let me grab another sphere where it is more apparent. Gurney's sphere. So he has a word in here right along this edge called a terminator. That is the core shadow. The actual term for where a light meets its shadow edge is called the terminator. It's called a core shadow when there is reflective light. And you can see down here, he's calling this core of the shadow, which means the deepest, darkest space where neither the direct light or the indirect light can meet it. The center light is where the light is the brightest. The highlight has to do with the surface of the object and where, where an elevation in space the light source actually is. But the core shadow is down the middle right along in here, which means that we are not facing the center light at all. That is around the corner away from us. And then you have reflected light. But again, with the reflected light, if you squint your eyes, it almost goes away entirely. So why is that? Why is it so visible when we look directly at it, but why does it disappear when we squint our eyes? And the answer to that is it's not a brighter value, it's a more colorful color. Shadows are colorless, or that you call them colorless. They aren't actually colorless, they're filled with color, but they lack color in them when a tone is diffusing everything or breaking it all up into a muddy color, because light has color to it, which includes shadows. Shadows are not really shadows, they are a weaker light source. But they're both lights. The shadow side is lit, the lit side is lit. The lit side is lit with a more powerful light source, so it makes the other side feel less lit, if that makes sense. And these are all things you have to be able to wrap your mind around, because if you don't understand this stuff, then it is going to be very difficult for you to understand how to dissect a form to find where it's lit versus where it's not lit. Or actually, let me rephrase that. Where it's directly lit versus where it is indirectly lit. And that's what this side is over here. This side is indirectly lit. This side is directly lit. So what that means is that we have a primary light source that is the light that lights everything up for us. That is the direct light. That light hits objects, and those objects become lights also, which is why we have reflected light in here, why we have gradation along in here, and so forth, because each of these areas is being bathed with light by different things. The light on the ground down here is being lit by the sky. The light on the object here is being lit by the wall that's near it. But both of those objects are lights. They're just not as strong as the primary light source. So our first job when we're dissecting something is to figure out where the primary light is the most effective and where it's not influential at all. And this one's very obvious because we can see it, where the other example was not as obvious because of its reflectivity, of its reflective properties. Where's my layers? There they are. Because this is a semi-reflective object, it's reflecting back in the environment. So it's more than just lit. It's also illuminated by all these other things. It's not so much that that red wall is lighting this object as much as this object is reflecting that red wall. There is a little bit of a difference. So this is taking on a reflection, but let me see if I can find something here. I don't know if this is going to give me anything or not. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to find an example that I need. Basically, when trying to find some examples here. All right, so in this room, there's a refraction through glass, and that glass is causing a color to occur, which is becoming the light. The object is being lit by that light, but notice how much surrounding that object is also lit by that light, which means that these objects are lights themselves. Notice how the bottom of this pole is more like the color of the ground. But as we go up, it starts getting darker through this space right in here. That's because the brightness of this floor is so bright that it is powerful enough to illuminate the bottom of this object. That's your reflective and your bounce lights and so forth. You can kind of see the influences in here. So this is a semi-translucent object, which means light is passing through it. And you can see back in here the influence of red stuff. So it might not be the reds back here. They might be right above this thing. But that red in that pocket is an influencer of this object. All the green in here is bouncing up into the bottom of this and making the bottom of it green. It's a light source. It's basically influencing that bottom because it is a light. The green pine needles are a light source. So the bottom of that is being illuminated by the green of the pine needles. And when you squint your eyes, the green goes away and you can see the shadow of the sphere. The green is the light, but it's not as strong of a light as the bright light above. So that is our primary light source. The green is a secondary light source. So let's look at that. And I'm responding to your question about dark. All right, at first glance, these are all dark. However, looking at this, they are not black. So black is never black in the way that you're thinking of it. Yes, it's a dark shirt, but dark does not mean the absence of light. It just means a darker value. So when you're shading, and you have your object, and your object is mostly dark, I can go about that far with my dark. I can go even that far. If I go any farther than that, I won't have room for this, which is a shadow, and that's too dark. That's the absence of value. But there you can see the line art still through that, which means I haven't gone pure black. And we've defined where something is different from the other, meaning we can see light over here and we can see that it's darker over there. So black objects are not black. And if they're lit, they will never be black. And you can say, but look at this photo. This is all black, and that's a photograph. The photographer's already done its distortion. So yeah, the thing is already a photo. It's a piece of art. It has become art. Photographers are artists too. They're not just snapping things. They're making art. Their art form is a little bit different than our art form, but it's still an art form. So they're going to take the shadows and get rid of any color within them because they don't want the competition. When you have colorful shadows, it's hard to see the lit spaces too. So they choose to remove some of the information, which is important. That's called editing. And in that editing process, they're making it easier for the viewer to see the picture, to react to the things that the photographer wants you to react to. Does that answer your question about the dark things? Yes, to answer your question, so we need to know something about optics. You've always needed to know something about optics because everything is about the eyes. It's all. I'm sorry, Daniel. No worries. I didn't think that you were like running off or anything. I figure if you're disappearing, it probably is your internet connection. Everything is going through your eyes, so you're learning how to see. I mean, that's what drawing is. You're learning how to see. And the more you learn about what's before you, the better you are at observing, at looking, at seeing, taking things in and understanding what you're seeing. If you ask, like, if 60 people walking down the street were walking by a thing and you asked all of them about that thing, most of them would tell you the name of the thing and that's it. The artist would describe things about the thing. Most people don't look at an object with a description in their mind. They have a label in their mind. They have a definition in their mind, but they don't have description. When you ask them about an object, that's the first time they have to explore the description of it. So if you ask, like, say, a little kid, describe to me a skateboard truck. What are the trucks? Explain that to somebody like another little kid so that another little kid will totally understand it. They aren't going to be able to figure that out. It takes a lot of work to simplify something down to explain it in its bare essence. It's very difficult to do. For an artist to take something apart and strip it down to the bare essence requires a lot of training. You have to have somebody show you how to see that an arm is a cylinder and the head is a sphere and that the torso has a pillow-like effect to it. Things like that. You have to have somebody guide you through. Otherwise, you're not going to believe in it because I don't see it at all. Of course you don't see it. It's all concept. It's all conceptual. Everything that we're doing as an artist is conceptual. We're trying to make sense of the visual world and we're trying to use a tool set that helps us get there, but it's all conceptual. But as you improve upon your ability to translate and then actually record it, those basic things are much, much easier to see. Kind of like practicing shading. You're all trying to practice shading from photographs, which is the worst way to do it. You shouldn't be doing anything from a photograph when you're first learning. You should be doing everything from life. But we can't regulate that here. We don't have a space for us to be able to sit down and set up a still life and everybody can work from it. Set up a model and everybody can work from the model and so forth. That doesn't exist in the virtual space. You have to make that happen on your end, or else it won't happen. And you and I will never come to terms with what the answer really is because you're not experiencing it at all. You're experiencing it maybe through a photograph, which again is not really an experience. You're inventing the experience. But to be able to see a halftone from a shadow, that's a skill that you develop over time. It's not something you're supposed to know right away. And if you do, then you've had some practice, or you've had some history with art before. And that is what that means. You have history because you actually have a definition for it. So with the figure, you have to be able to, and I'm answering the question about the silk material and the fabric obscuring the legs. What is the person doing? The very first question you ask yourself is not how difficult is this clothing to draw, but what is the person doing? And when you don't ask yourself questions about the person, then you're not drawing the right thing. You're engaged in the wrong part of the drawing. You're engaged in a detail that does not answer any questions, because that detail you have to back up from it enough to see what is influencing it to make it the detail that you're fixated on. And that's the human action. So you have to be able to look at the photograph and make some assessment. Like if their legs are black and they're in a black environment and you can't make anything out, I could understand that being a very difficult thing to try to discern. But if you can see their legs in the environment enough, like you can see their body in the ground is, say, green grass or a blue carpet or something like that, and you can make out their silhouette, you should in your own mind be able to say, oh, they're leaning on their left leg. Oh, they're perfectly balanced over both of their legs. Oh, they're lifting their one leg up. I can see that in the middle of the dress. There's a little lump that looks like a kneecap. Those things, you'll start to make sense of it. You'll start to be able to look at it and go, oh, yes, 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 I get it. And then once you understand their action, everything else is easy to do, or easier to do, because you understand what you're drawing. You're not drawing pants. You're drawing a person wearing pants. But you're not just drawing a person wearing pants. You're drawing a person leaning on one leg, leaned over with one foot slightly raised, wearing pants. So you see what I'm doing now? Is I'm describing the action before I'm describing the clothing, because the action is going to inform me of everything else that I need to do. Once I engage in the human activity, everything else makes better sense. All those crazy folds, they're easily understood when you understand what the person's doing, because you'll understand why the folds are there. Because I mean, if you put your arms down to your sides, I don't know if you're wearing a long sleeve shirt or not, but when you put your arms down on the sides, you don't have any folds unless you're wearing something bigger than you. But you don't have any folds because there's no activity yet. Your arm is down on its side. Ah, but there are folds. Where? Under the armpit. Because your arm is down on the side, it's pushing the material against each other. So you have folds in your armpit. So there are a few folds, but on the sleeve, none. Not until you raise your arm and bend your arm. Then you have folds. Why do you have folds? Because you raised your arm and bent your arm. It's your action that caused that fold to occur. Folds are not random. They are because of activity. Every fold has a meaning because of the activity that is being performed by the model. Know the action, and you'll know the logic behind what you're trying to break down. When drawing a figure and find that, I have a general question. When drawing a figure and find that something is not working, I try fixing it, and sometimes it works out, but sometimes I just find that it's better to just start over. Do you think that's good practice, or should I try to fix the thing I already have? I think the answer to that is always try to fix it first. I mean, you're going to get to a certain point where you're just like, this is too messy. I got to start over. And you'll start over, and it won't take you very long because you've already solved all the problems. So it's just a matter of copying what you did before. But go through the motions of solving the problems. Here's the thing you have to understand with this whole art thing. I can point out your problems very easily. That's not going to make you a better artist. Until you engage in fixing those problems that I pointed out and doing the steps that I'm pointing out you should do, you're not solving anything. You're just better informed as to why you made the thing wrong in the first place. but it hasn't changed anything. You're still just as not as good at it as you were prior to doing the first one until you fix it. That's when you improve. So until you actually engage in the things that you're doing by going through and altering them towards a better or towards a more improved direction, then it's really just a bunch of, I don't want to call it useless information, but it might as well be useless if you're not going to use it for what it needs to be used for. Yeah, Peter, you're absolutely right. I know a lot of people who shouldn't be teaching art because they don't make any. They're intellectually capable, but they don't know anything about art. And when I talk to them, they sound naive, like not somebody that I will have a good conversation with. I'll be arguing with them within a few minutes because their naivety leads to very strange conclusions instead of using logic. Unless you have done it, you can't really quantify and you can't really intellectually stimulate or enlighten somebody who is good at doing the hard part of it. You're just going to be telling them things and that's it, but it isn't going to make any sense to them because they're already so far beyond you that what you're saying isn't relevant or might just sound a little weirdly redundant to them because they already understand what you're saying. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but there are, like I said, there are a lot of people out there that should not be teaching art because they don't make art. Which is a good question for you to ask your teachers if they don't demonstrate for you at all. It's the rule that I make for myself whenever I take a class or a workshop from somebody. If they're not willing to show me something, I'm not willing to take it anymore, and I'd like all of my money back, please. Because I'm not going in there to listen to somebody. I want to watch. I want to see them do it. I'm definitely one who needs the intellectual portion of it, but I need to watch somebody do stuff. I need to have witnessed the performance so that I can partake in the performance. Because now I kind of know what's going on. Oh, you're doing this. Let me try that too. If they don't do any demonstrating, then I don't bother with them anymore. And I think that should be a good rule of thumb for all of you as well. If you don't have a teacher that demonstrates, then don't bother with them. No matter how good somebody says they are, they're not that good if they can't show you. And everything you need to know is through being able to see what you need to see, not just hearing it. Some of us are intellect first, right? There's 3 different types of learning. Those who need to do it first and fall on their face, then experience somebody showing them how to make it work. So those who need to experience first. Those who need to see somebody else do it first before they try it. And some of those need to understand it intellectually before they try it. So they don't need to see it either. They just need to hear it. And there's different types of learners. And I'm definitely one that needs to see it first, show me, but I also need to know why. So I need the intellect too. I need 2 things. In order for me to go off in complete confidence that I can do something, I need a couple things fulfilled. And once I have them fulfilled, oh yeah, I'll go make mud. I'll go make a mess. Doesn't matter to me. I think the second one has come from learning how to learn. I think if I was just in the raw, it would be show me. You show me and then I can do it. I need to be able to see it first. But I've learned how to learn, and I know that there's intellect that goes into this too, so I need 2 parts fulfilled. And if you're really good, you'll show me all 3 and I'll have a complete education from what you just gave me. And I should have all the confidence in the world to be able to go off and make mistakes confidently, but at least try. These are all very good questions. I do appreciate all of these. This is a good run of information that is insightful. But as far as that shading thing goes, let me grab a dark photograph, and don't let me do what I'm doing stop you from asking questions. If you have more questions, by all means, ask away. Notice these are all fashion photography photos. So they have white backdrops. That also makes it snow blind, which means that these are going to look exceptionally black in front of that white wall. But if you get it in front of something else, like here, it's in front of a dark wall, and all of a sudden, oh, is it a 3D model? Oh, no, it's not. It's a photograph. What a horrible model. He looks like a 3D model, the stare. When you put the dark in front of a dark background, you can see the dark better because the dark background is similar. So now light things become more relevant. Where here in fashion photography, the white is so powerful that lightness within the dark silhouette is irrelevant. And it's not about how light the dark is, it's about you being able to see the whole cut so that you can make a decision whether or not this is something you'd want to buy. That's what fashion photography is for. It's about purchasing things. Where photography is a candid moment, right? Even this is a photographic situation. There's no shadows anywhere, none whatsoever. These are for fashion purposes. None of these photographs were meant for us to draw from. They were all meant for us to buy something. Oh my gosh, I love that cut so much. I gotta buy one. When working in layers, should we get in the habit of drawing each layer in full or just what we can see? I would get in the habit of drawing it in full, because just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not influencing what you do see. Does that make sense? Like the shirt that's underneath could be doing most of the work of what you see on top, but you wouldn't know that if you weren't looking for it. All right, so what's a halftone, what's a shadow, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so direct light is coming from above. That's our extreme direction. So direct light, D-light. Bounce light is going to come from below, if there is any. But this photographer has done a really good job of removing bounce light from the situation. So the shadows kind of go graphically back. Now, what is this model doing? Well, this model, this mannequin, the upper half of the body is in a walk cycle mode. One arm is forward and one arm is back. This arm is forward, this arm is back. We can tell visually because this whole entire arm is in darkness and this entire arm is lit, but it is gradating, which means that the light is above the body and is not a very strong one, because as the light goes downward this way, it is getting darker. It's darker here than it is here, and it's darker here than it is here. It's darker here than it is here. It's darker here than it is up here. So there's a gradation taking place. So the brightness of the shirt right up through here is lighter than all the bright stuff down here. And the bright stuff in here is brighter than all the bright stuff down here because of that gradation that's falling off of the object. So in the armpit, you have folds that happen, and it depends upon what kind of clothing you're wearing. Like I'm wearing a loose sweatshirt right now. So when I put my arms down on the side, most of the folds are going off into the arm because of the heaviness of the material is pushing all the material off into the arm space. But when my t-shirt that I'm wearing underneath is one of those really thin t-shirts, you know, those new lightweight t-shirts, and all the folds are on my chest over here, not in the arm, because the material is a lot thinner. So it's localized instead of forced. The heavier material of my sweatshirt is so heavy that all of it pushes all of it over. where the t-shirt is so thin that this little bit of material right here is just pushing this material right here, instead of all of this right here pushing everything in my arm over to the side. Does that make sense? It's the weight of the material that's determining how much noise is either on the chest or under the arm. The thickness of the material, the weight of the material, the heaviness of the material, that's all part of the determining factor. You can see that this material is really lightweight. So there's folds running across the armpits out into the chest. If this was a heavier material, you might not be seeing those. You might be seeing all of the material getting pushed over, and most of the folds will be like congesting right around in here instead. There are a number of factors, but the weight of the material is a big one. If you don't pay attention to that, like, I am picky about everything. I'm just that way internally. I don't say anything out loud, so I don't sound like a picky bastard. But when I go in to shop, there's a certain heaviness of the material that I'm looking for. I don't want it too heavy because I'm already really hot-blooded, so I boil. And if I'm wearing heavy clothing, I'm like miserable all day long because of how warm I am. So I need a certain thinness of material to make things very specific and tempered for me. But I'm aware of this. And a lot of people aren't aware of that kind of stuff. They just buy stuff because it's the thing that's out and the thing that's popular, so they just buy it. They're not thinking about weight and comfort and all these other things. I'm also a designer, so I'm aware of all these materials and the material properties. It's my job to be aware of them. So it makes it easier for me to look at something and say, oh, okay, I can understand what's going on here. Like with this, it's very easy to see what's going on here. The t-shirt, the shirt that the guy's wearing is a stretch material. It's clinging to the body, but it has a lot of folds, which means that it's not necessarily designed for these particular proportions. They're designed for a different kind of proportion, but they share similar volume. So you can put the shirt on this mannequin and it works just fine. That's why some people, like when you go and buy clothing, you look at it in the catalog and you're like, oh man, that looks so awesome. I can't wait to buy it. Then you go and buy it, or you go and try it on, and it's like hanging off your body weird. And you're like, what the heck? How come it doesn't look like what is in the photograph? They picked the clothing fit to fit perfectly to the model in the photograph. Believe it or not, even t-shirts by wealthy people are sized. They will take their clothing in and have it sized perfectly to their body. So their clothing doesn't look like clothing on everybody else. It looks like it fits on their body. It doesn't take very much, or it doesn't cost very much to take in your shirt or take in your pants or whatever. But it's a thing. It's a thing because I know I have a lot of rich friends, and everything they buy, they don't go home and just start wearing. They go home and have it tailor fit to them before they start wearing it. It goes through this whole process of being retrofit to their body, and then it looks good on them, right? Because people with wealth are trying to look good. That's why when I walk in a room, somebody looks at me and they're like, you don't have any money. Because I'm not trying to look like I have money. I don't care. I'm not really there to perform for people. I'm there to just be there. So I don't have my tailor fit clothes and all that stuff. It's sort of weird in my own mind to think like that. Like, you're not going to wear that t-shirt yet because it doesn't quite fit you. So you're going to have somebody tailor fit it to you. That's freaking weird, man. At least that's what's going on in my head. But all these little details, these details are such important details. They all go into the answer of your questions. All these little things do. It isn't just coming from one thing, it's coming from like 50 different things. When you get into character mode and you're trying to design a character, this you'll remember now forever. When you're designing a wealthy character, you're not going to have them wearing baggy clothing. It's going to be tailor fit perfectly to their body, because that's what the rich do. It's perfect. It's mine. Greed makes it that way. It's my thing. It's such a trip. Anyway, back to clothing, and not the tailor fit kind. So when we're looking at this, then all of these areas right up along in here on the shoulder, all of these little zigzaggy things right along in here, those are all part of the light. Those are all facing upwards towards the light. Right across here, downward, none of that stuff is in the light, with the exception of this one fold right here, all the way down to the bottom of the rib cage. That's all in dark, because this model has big pectoralis muscles that are further forward than the rib cage. The drapery is hanging off of the edge of those muscles and is turned underneath. So everything that is hanging below that line is in shadow, or in a shadow space. So that means all the light that you see within this space right here cannot be as light as anything up in here. Because if you make it that, then there is no more light. Because you put light both in the shaded spaces and in the lit spaces. This right through here is all in the light. I'm making it wider so you can see where I'm circling. It's this fold right in here. It gets darker in the very middle of it, but that's not in the shadow. That's just flatter on the body, but it's still facing upward this way. It's in the light. All of this stuff over here, lit, lit, and lit. Those three folds are lit. Everything else is in the shadows. And there's only a little space where they're lit. And it's right down the middle, right through here. That's the only space where those three folds are lit. The rest of those folds are indirectly lit, which means they're in the shadows, so they're dark. So now that you have been made into intellectual experts of light, shadow, and halftone, you should have absolutely no problem breaking them apart during your work week. Oh, wait, no, you have to practice first. You know enough now, but you need to go practice it so that you understand it. Understanding it and practicing it, totally different things. Yep, so much practice. Me too. I mean, if I don't keep practicing on a daily basis, then I am not continuing to upgrade my skills. Therefore, somebody could just not hire me because I'm not working as clearly and as sharply as everyone else is. We're all in this together. We're all moving forward together. If I didn't teach, I wouldn't be practicing as much. If I wasn't practicing as much, I don't know how good I'd be. Because all I would be doing are my jobs. And jobs don't warrant practice. You have to perform when it's a job. There's no practicing at that point. All right, it's 12:30, the bewitching hour. Any last second questions, throw them out there. But otherwise, thank you very much for the questions. You guys did an awesome job today with them. A lot of really good questions, and I hope I was able to answer them for you. If not, then please email me the question again so that I can go into further detail with you. But do keep in mind that this week I am traveling, so if you are trying to get a hold of me, it will be a little bit dicey in the first portion of the week. And then in the second portion, I will only be able to get back to you in the evenings, because that's when I am not teaching. I'm teaching during the daytime, though. All right, everybody have a great week. Good luck with your homework this week. Thank you again for participation. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all the questions. Have a great one, everybody.